All right, welcome back, everyone. I wanted to talk about ceremony and practice in the Soto Zen tradition called Seijiki, or feeding the hungry ghosts. And I've added shadows in there. Technically, it's called feeding the hungry ghosts. And I thought it was a good thing to talk about given this week of other traditions celebrating Halloween. Samhain, I think is how you pronounce that one word. Looks like Samhain, but I think it's Samhain. La Dia de los Muertos, of course, All Souls Day, or Obon. So technically, feeding the hungry ghosts as a festival and ceremony takes place in the Buddhist calendar, which follows the lunar calendar. So it's the 15th day of the 7th month. It usually falls in the Gregorian calendar in August or September. And it is the Obon ceremony, if you know what that is. So first, let's talk about hungry ghosts. So in the Buddhist cosmology, there are 6 realms. And often they're put in this progression from least suffering to most suffering. So the first is called the heavenly realm. And it's where gods and devas live, and they live long, 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 long lives. And they have pleasure. Just the whole life is about pleasure. And then it's considered, though, that the downside of that is that because the life is just full of pleasure and they don't just focus on pleasure, that they actually don't understand or don't have the opportunity then to gain wisdom or compassion, which, as we well know, are what's called the 2 wings of Buddhism. We practice to increase your wisdom and compassion equally in Buddhism. So that's the first realm. So the second realm is called the Titan or the Ashura realm. The demigods or the minor deities live there. And therefore the opposite traits of the previous realm. And so their whole life is consumed with hate, jealousy, and envy, right? So that, and that leads them to a lot of anger. And again, it's so consuming that there's no room for the thought or the development or accessing of other qualities, again, such as compassion and wisdom for themselves or other people, right? Now, this is considered, for them, it's not suffering, right? If you think, oh, that sounds like a lot of suffering, this is considered, because they're so consumed, they don't find it to be suffering. So then the third realm is called the human realm. And in fact, as many of you have heard, in the human realm is considered the most auspicious because in the human realm, we have the opportunity to know suffering and non-suffering, joys and sorrows. And so because we have that capacity, we actually have the best chance of developing wisdom and compassion. Right? There's enough joy that we can be settled, and there's enough suffering or difficulty to encourage us to find solutions for them or to understand their causes, you could say. All right. And then the fourth realm is the hungry ghost, or the preta. Here, the hungry ghost is so consumed by wanting, right, greed, that they're obsessed with how to get what they crave. And you'll often see pictures of hungry ghosts as beings that have long, skinny necks, right? and stomachs are distended because they can't get nourishment. Sometimes they have very small arms, so they can't even feed themselves. Or the story goes that even if they could feed themselves, let's say they have a truffle chocolate, but by the time it reaches their mouth or goes down that skinny neck, it becomes like sawdust or something. So they just can't get nourished because their wanting is so all-consuming. Then the next is the animal realm. And here, because of the need for survival, that supersedes other thoughts and aspirations. Now, I know some animal rights people that totally disagree, but this is just kind of the broad strokes of Buddhist cosmology, right? And then there's the hell realm, where suffering and lamentation is so all-consuming that it leaves no room, again, for thoughts of wisdom or compassion. Now, in some ways, and very much so, these are actually taught as realms that one literally transmigrate through based upon your karmic actions in your present life, and depending on how that is, you might go to one of these realms. And so the story that's behind the Festival of the Hungry Ghosts is similar, or points this out. So the Buddha had a disciple named Moggallana, who was so adept and so diligent at practice that he was had supernatural powers. He could levitate. He could go through these 6 realms and not get stuck in them, and he could just travel through all the realms because of his supernatural power. So one day, as he was, having a nice stroll through the realms, he saw his own mother in the hungry ghost realm because she was so stingy during her last life. And so he wanted to help her escape from that because she was suffering. He saw it as suffering. And so, he did everything he could to try to get her out of that realm, but he wasn't able to succeed. So then he went to the Buddha and said, "Oh, my mother is suffering so much. Is there a way that I can help her? Is there a way we can help her get out of that realm?" And the Buddha said, yes, there's a way. But even with all your supernatural powers and powers from diligent effort, it can't take one person. It will take all the virtues of all practitioners through all directions. And so it takes a Sangha to be able to support a person or a being to, purify their karma so that they can go to a different realm. And so this is how it became a festival, that the whole Sangha does this to actually invite in the hungry ghosts. Or, and a lot of like All Souls Day and all these things are considered, and in the Chinese tradition of where this comes from, it's the day in which the idea that the veil between, our world and other worlds is thin. And so it's a day to invite in what difficult. It is a way, just like the story, shows up 2 things. And it's behind this ceremony and festival, is that one, it's a way of repaying our ancestors, right? Just like Moggallana really wanted to help his mother. So that's one. And this is also why in the ceremonies, you are allowed to submit names of people who have passed, either in the year, or to people who, there's some challenge still for you about their death. Or so, for instance, the first time I did it at Tassajara, the monastery, I put in my mother's name, who had died at that point, like at 30 years. So, so you can put names. of people of past and ancestors or whatever. Okay. And so I thought I'd take you a little bit through the ceremony to show how, as a ritual, it's inviting the hungry ghosts realm in. And in some ways, you're like, well, what about all the other realms? But this is the realm that's probably hardest for us to accept, because it's where you could say, that's why I added shadow. It's kind of like the places where we don't want to admit is present, or the qualities we don't want to admit. So first, and I will say in convert Buddhist centers, it's happening, on Halloween night at San Francisco Zen Center. I'm sure they had it. But again, it's usually in the August or September. Okay. So we begin by, in the procession, they play cymbals and drum and make a lot of noise. And first it starts out one at a time in sequence, and then it just becomes very chaotic. And part of that is to create this condition that's, seem very different than usual. And if you can imagine in a temple or a monastery where, silent meditation is pervasive, this cacophony of noise is like a different realm. Oh, I forgot, the most important part is the setup, which is, so in a temple, in the ceremonial hall called the Buddha Hall, of course, I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of an altar, right, with the Buddha statue and incense and candles and all that. So first we cover that up, because the story is that a ghost, when they see a Buddha or Bodhisattva, they're too scared to come into the realm. So we cover that up. And then on the opposite wall, we set up another altar where we think of things that will encourage the hungry ghosts to come. So there's junk food, often there are Twinkies and bags of chips, and you could put food of someone, favorite food of someone who passed away on there. So it's, and then this is where we do the ceremony, at that altar, like the opposite, right? Again, it's really kind of setting up a sense of inviting what we turn away from, usually we leave behind us, so to speak. Also, open the doors to the temple and the Buddha Hall so that it's easy for them to flow through. Right? And in a lot of places, they put up big pictures of scary ghosts and stuff, just to give that sense. All right. So after we make all that noise, then the bows, of course, but then we start circumambulating as we chant. Now the chanting is a series of what's called dharanis. And dharanis they might have mean something in the past, but right now nobody really knows what they mean. So they're nonsensical noises that have implications, but you can't grasp at the meaning. So on a certain level, again, it's that setting up with our voice now and the hall, sounds that, we can't rationally understand, to, again, create a environment to bring in the unknown, the shadow. And then we circumambulate so that each person has an opportunity to offer at the altar. And the priest does open it, and the priest actually also says some things while we are inviting in the guests, we also wanted to make a safe space for humans. So the priest offers some words to say, yes, we want to invite these hungry ghosts in, and please protect us, right? So then as we're circumambulating, a person also then recites all the names that people have submitted of those who pass. And then we end the ceremony by, again, making the cacophony of noises of the instrument and people yelling and stuff like that. So this is a container to kind of bring in what we keep out, in a way, inviting in the not only saying that's a thin veil, we say, okay, come on over, come and visit us. Now, we can think of the ghost realm as also, and I think probably for most of us, you're probably more comfortable thinking of it as kind of metaphorical kind of realms or psychological kind of realms. And they're actually talked about also as a way in which actually they're mental and emotional states that we can travel through, often in just a few minutes. For instance, right? You see someone in a crowd, right? Very regular in the human realm, right? You see someone you're attracted to. Then you go into a whole story making about it. I once was at a Frameline, which is the LGBTQ film festival, and there was a little short about this woman who, is at a grocery store and is at the checkout line. And then she looks and sees a person, and then you see all the things that they do. And then at the end, she's still in line, right? So we can make these stories up. So here's a story, right? So you see someone, you're attracted to them, you fantasize about them, and then, asking them out. It's so wonderful. We're here at fall. Maybe this happened at the beginning of the summer. So, you fall in love. The heaven realm. Everything about them is perfect. Every moment is just so beautiful, right? You go to the summer fairs, you try out food, you go to all the fancy restaurant, and then, you eat a lot because you're feeding each other, and it's all so great. And then by the time it's time to leave, or the check comes, and you see how expensive it is, or your stomach hurts from overeating, you've hit the, and all that eating and all that consumption could be like, these days we might think about survival, but maybe it's like that animal realm, like just feeding, right? And then you got the stomach ache, or the bill comes, and then you're hit the Titan or the Sure, like, all those tech people are driving up the prices. I can't afford this anymore, everything. Right? Just like you make up these stories, and it's just like, it makes me so angry. And then, and then you go to another event with them, and then you see them look at someone else. So now your jealousy and your envy starts to, not your jealousy, your jealousy starts to come up, right? And you're like, oh no, maybe they're getting tired of me, blah, blah, blah. And now you go into the hell realm, right? So in just a few days or minutes, in the Zen tradition, we eat in the zendo, and we're supposed to receive what is given. I think that you can go through a whole realm in a meal, right? You see what's being served, and you like some of it, and you don't like some of it, or you get too much, or you get too little of what you want. All those realms can be in there, right? So, and we will say that having the ceremony is to create a container to receive, right? And I think, I would say that I would go as far to say, how is it that we can nourish, right? It is called the feeding the hungry ghost. And then actually today, I gave this talk in my group on Monday because it's Halloween day. And yet today I'm thinking, nourishment. If you're feeding hungry ghosts, this is about nourishment. So what is it that nourish what we find to be difficult, right? And in fact, the ceremony or the chant that we do is called the Gate of Sweet Dew. And it starts out like this. First, you bring in, the three treasures. Homage to the Buddha in 10 directions. Homage to the Dharma in 10 directions. Homage to the Sangha in 10 directions. Homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to the great, merciful, compassionate reliever of suffering, contemplating the world's cries, Kanzeon Bodhisattva, or Kuan Yin. Homage to the expounder of the teaching, the Arhat, Ananda. And then here's the summoning. All of us assembled together, arousing awakened mind, unconditionally offer up a bowl of pure food to the furthest reaches of vast emptiness in the 10 directions, including every atom throughout the entire Dharma realm, so as to give alms to hungry ghosts in every land. We invite all of our departed ancestors, going back to ancient times, dwelling in mountains, rivers, and earth, as well as rough demonic spirits from the wilderness, to come and gather here. Now, with deep sympathy, we offer food to all of you, praying that you will each accept this food and transfer it along, making offerings to Buddhas, sages, and all sentient beings throughout the vast emptiness of the universe, so that you and all the many sentient beings will be satisfied. Moreover, we sincerely wish for you to take advantage of these mantras and food to depart from suffering, be liberated, find birth in heaven, and receive joy. With according intention, may you travel freely through the pure lands in the 10 directions and arouse Bodhi mind, practicing the Bodhi way, and in the future, definitely become a Buddha. We entreat those who have previously attained the way since ancient times. May you bring all beings together to liberation, day and night, constantly protect us. We offer food to beings throughout the Dharma realm so that every being will equally receive this fortunate offering. Whatever virtue and merit this produces, we completely transfer and dedicate to the unsurpassed awakening with total clarity and wisdom of the whole Dharma realm of true reality, that all may speedily attain Buddhahood without incurring any other destinies. May all sentient beings of the Dharma realm take advantage of this teaching to quickly attain Buddhahood. All right, this is a version from Ancient Dragon Zen Gate, one of the affiliate Zen centers. So I want to bring in the sense that in some ways, I think this is a practice, right? Our practice is how do we allow ourselves to be open to places that we have difficulty with, right? For those who have, done any retreat, you know that there's always difficulty in retreat. You can't avoid it. And so much of practice is about how do we manage that, right? A lot of that has to do with knowing our patterns, knowing how to work with it. And yet every retreat is an opportunity to work with that. You can say, okay, well, it worked last time. You can try the same thing this time and it doesn't work. And so much of retreat is really working about what is it that we find difficult and then setting it down. Or how do we meet it in a way that nourishes it? Because, for many of us, you try pushing things away in a retreat that's difficult. Usually that just makes more tenseness, right? And in fact, I myself think that I wake up actually to my difficulties, right? Or how I have added to the difficulty of the moment. A famous thing, to me, was that one time, again, in the Soto Zen temple, we eat, and you're facing out, obviously, when you're eating, right? And at the end, someone said, as I saw the rutabaga coming around, right? Because at night we only eat like roasted veggies usually, and then what's called the Buddha bowl, which is all the leftovers mixed together. And then the only new thing is whatever veggie they roasted. And this person is like, I realized that thinking I don't like rutabaga is just extra because it doesn't matter. It's going to come because that's what's being served. You could say no, and then you would just take a little bit. But thinking and going, why are they serving it? I don't like it. It's just extra because it doesn't help in the moment. And also we could go to the back door of the kitchen and eat that time peanut butter and bread or bananas or whatever. So it's not like they're going to go, but it's just, here's where we catch ourselves. So much of the insight we have on retreat is where we see that we've have added to the difficulty of the moment, because that's the only thing that we can control, right? Conditions will be whatever. Yes, by that I don't mean things don't happen that could be better, right? For instance, like the difficulty we've had in the Sangha with the transphobic stuff that happened a few months ago, right? It's an opportunity. I myself think that those moments actually, I like to say to my students that, our relationship really becomes a student-teacher relationship when you have difficulty with me, right? When it's all peachy keen, that's just projection, right? It's how do we work through difficulties, actually, right? Which may mean we need help, which may mean that it doesn't go smoothly at first. And so much of our practice is about pausing to acknowledge difficulty. And then what part of that difficulty are we adding to it, or that we can practice with, so that we are contributing and staying open to ways of dealing with it that we didn't think of before. To me, that's when conflicts happen. I think this is how it should be. You think that's how it should be. And then we clash, and neither of us have the flexibility to say, okay, either give and take or find a new model or ask for help even, right? In fact, I was talking to somebody, and dukkha, as many of you know, is translate usually suffering, dis-ease, discontent, dissatisfaction. Recently, I was talking to someone and I thought, oh, struggle is dukkha. Where is it that I struggle? Resistance is dukkha. But again, a lot of practice isn't about the content. A lot of practice is learning what quality of how we behave, how we perceive, how we respond, or how we react versus respond, contribute towards difficulty that's already here. That's part of life, sickness, old age, and death, for one thing. And so, how do we nourish the hungry ghost would be, how do we meet difficulty in a way that's nourishing, not just for ourselves, but for all involved? Yeah, so I'll just end with that by saying that, and invite you all to bring into the space and the room what nourishes you when you have challenges or difficulties.